Hello, FewCandy here, and welcome back to planetzoo, where we are just admiring our mandrills, and I am super pleased with how this habitat turned out. The mandrills climbing absolutely everywhere. Yeah, really pleased with the layers of height that we've got in this one, where you can look up the habitat and they climb across all these vines and come down to the front and play with the boxes. Knock them into the river. They are absolutely adorable animals, so I really hope you enjoyed this one, and we will go over the technique for the barrier in a future episode. I know that footage was lost, so we will cover that again. But for today we are going to focus on everything you need to know about exhibits, because we are yet to get an exhibit into our zoo, so I think it's high time that we actually did that. But before we do come on to that, there's a couple of things I just need to address here. We have yet another penguin escaping. Someone did tell me it's something to do with these platforms, the fact they can jump from these outside of the habitat. I'm just going to kind of check that. But yeah, none of these lines are outside of the habitat walls, so I'm a little bit confused by that. And I'm yet to see one actually physically escaping to know where it is that they're getting out from. So once I do that, then we'll have a look at fixing the problem there. Now, the other thing that's happened is I actually don't have any now, conveniently, but I was getting a lot of items breaking down, so I think it is about time that we had a little look at our staff and employed some more mechanics. We've only got 2, and do you know what? One thing that I do want to do, which came from a viewer idea, so thank you so much for this, is we're going to call all of our mechanics some variation of Bob, in honour to our beloved Bob mod in City Skylines. So we're going to call Joan Bobby, and then we're going to add ourselves another mechanic in. And this one, let's go down to it, can be called, oh, it's another lady. Let's, Roberta. I think that'll do. I think that'll do. And let's train them as well, because they're not seeming to get round things too quickly. So we'll train those two. We'll leave Roberta because she's absolutely brand new. So having that extra mechanic at least should hopefully help fix things a little bit quicker as our zoo starts to get a little bit larger. And just looking down our staff, I mean, everything else is okay. The keepers are pretty overworked in the mandrills and the lemurs and the prairie dogs. So I'm thinking let's train up some more of these as well. We've got tons of budget. So in fact, let's do all of our keepers. We'll give all of them a boost. And our educator as well, because they're slightly further behind. The security guard has low workload at the moment, so I'm not too inclined to do anything with them. I think we'll leave them. And the caretakers seem to be absolutely fine too. Vendors are a little overworked, so we could do with, let's train all of our vendors. In fact, let's keep them all going up to 3 stars here, and that will help them manage that high workload a little bit better. So first things first, we do want to get our animals into the exhibit so our vets can start researching them, because that's really important for exhibits. If you want the best looking ones, you need to do the vet research on the particular exhibit animals that you have in your zoo. Now, obviously, the tropical pack has launched since we did our last episode. Now, I have already had my mechanic researching the Indonesian theme here to get all of the new building pieces from the pack. And remember, all you have to do is the first section of these different themes to get all of the building pieces. And all of the rest of it is just different blueprints if you do want to add certain buildings and styles into your zoo. Obviously, we're building our own styles, so for me, that's much less important. But we do now want to set up our vet with our new exhibit animals. So let's go ahead and place in exhibits first, and then we will look at how we're going to design them and decorate them afterwards. So exhibits are found in the facilities menu under animal exhibits. And you can see I've got a few blueprints here, but in general, there's just 2 things to worry about. One, which is a basic exhibit, and one, which is the walkthrough exhibit. Now we're going to be touching on both of these today. So first up with the walkthrough exhibit, this is going to go somewhere over here, but for now, I'm just going to place it in here, and we're going to get our animals into that so that we can start our vet researching it. Now, of course, we're going to be going for one of the new animals from the tropical pack, which is the brown-throated sloth. So you can see in here, when you come to natural habitat, it says walkthrough exhibit, so they can only be in this style of exhibit. So this is exactly who I want to put in here. So we can have between 1 and 6 of them. So let's go ahead and get ourselves some sloths, and it doesn't matter about male, female here. So if we go into exhibit trading, and this is on a different menu to animal trading, so you will need to remember to click exhibit. We'll find our sloths, and then we can go ahead and purchase them. And obviously we're very cash rich because I've left this game playing for ages to get that mechanic research done, and a bit more research on our transport rides that we're going to be coming on to very soon. Now this female looks very, very good indeed. I'm going to have a little quick look at age. So they live up to 35 years and they can have babies up to 35 years. So that's good enough for me. She's 16. Let's adopt her. So if you're on Sandbox, really important to refresh the list because you'll get new sloths in all the time. And keep refreshing it if you're on franchise because you may find new animals popping up too. This one's quite young and actually pretty good. So I think we'll get him too. Oh, see, we've got now a bronze medal male, so let's definitely get him. Oh, now we've got a silver male. Oh my goodness, let's definitely get him. Okay, so that's our 3 males that we've got. Now we need to get 2 more females. So yeah, she's looking not too bad. We don't want ones that are super duper red. So this one with the fertility is not going to do us any favours. So if we breed them, we're going to be able to release them to the wild and then we'll get more cash or conservation credits and such like from that. So yeah, let's go for this female here. She seems reasonable. Now, within exhibit trading, we can then go to our exhibit animal storage. We can select all of these. And we can say send to zoo and we'll just drop them in here. And you'll see with the walkthrough exhibit, it will automatically give you a design for what the exhibit should look like. And the animals already placed in it like that. You don't need a vet or a caretaker to transport the animals around. So there we go. We have got the sloths in. And what that means now, if we go into our zoo menu to vet research, we now should be able to, yeah, we've got the sloths here. So let's put one of our vets onto that to research. Now I'm just going to pause the game because what we will want to do is hook this path up. So let's make sure we've got angle snap on so we get a nice connection there. We'll just bring this out. I'm just going to really basically connect this up to the path this side for the moment so that that is hooked in. And then if we go to zoo, I am actually going to hire a new keeper to look after all of these exhibits. So we'll just drop them in there and we'll worry about the staff zone afterwards. We'll be able to see who it is because it says no work zone here. But we will come back to the sloths later on. So before that, let's focus on our smaller basic exhibits over here. Now you will note if I come back into exhibits and I place this in here. Now we've got quite a complex pathing network going on. If I place this in just in the middle of this area like this, and what I want is actually these exhibits to be in a building, and then I come to delete out some of these paths. You can find quite often, and it's not going to do it right now, of course, but you can find that it will delete some of your path network alongside it. So the way I'm going to do this is not like this. We're actually going to put in the path that we want them to sit on first, and then we will come back to doing the exhibit afterwards. So let's remember our pathing techniques. We're going to hold control on our keyboard so that we get this not snapping into the path, and then I can produce a nice straight path like this where we want our exhibit building to sit. So that's going to go pretty much like that. We'll let go of control so we can connect it in there nicely. Let's make sure we've got angle snap on actually. And we'll just bring this out straight that side. So this path is going to run through our exhibit building essentially. So let's go back in here. We'll grab our first exhibit. Let's spin it around and try and line it up really nicely to this path that we have here. And I'm actually going to put this, I think, in the middle. And what I really want is this as close to this path as possible, ultimately. But obviously still connecting in. If you get too close, it won't connect. So you want to make sure you can see those path bits like that. So that feels pretty good to me. So let's drop that in here. And what I want is 3 exhibits in this building, but I don't want them right next to each other or 4 meters apart. So we're going to change the grid size again to 1 meter. And then we're going to place this in this side. And you can see it's already connecting to that path, which is good news there. Now this one is having a bit more of a tricky time. Let's go ahead and just remove these paths that we're not wanting either side here. And we'll come back into facilities and we will hover this one over these so we can select the group. So we're adding it to the group again. We'll change the grid size back to 1 meter again. And we're going to want to try and get it in. See, that is the right place, but this path is now greatly deformed out the front. And you see what I mean? This has now deleted our path network, which is not ideal at all because everything's sort of connected in. So I'm going to remove this section of path from there so that it's not hooked into the main bit. And what I'm going to do this time is I don't want this one to connect in. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click control and I know that it won't come this far over. So we'll just bring this down like that. And then we'll try and hook this in as best we can for now. Super rough, but that will do. And then we'll come back to our facilities because we don't want it to connect into the main path over this side. Select a group, change it back to 1 meter. and then add that in here. Okay, so hopefully this time, yes, we can delete that path. We can delete all of this path, and we're not interrupting the main path now. So finally, that is good news. Now this one's going to be slightly wonky coming out of here. Well, I think I'm okay with that. And then what we need to do is just make sure that this exhibit is hooked in. So if you're using exhibits and you're getting that path joining onto another path network and you can't delete it without deleting your existing path network, just remember to use hold control on your keyboard, put in a piece of what I would like to call a blocking path so that it will connect onto that and not onto your main path network. So they're incredibly finicky, but that's hopefully a helpful little trick for you there. Now coming back into exhibit trading, what I do want to do is find some animals which will be high in appeal. So let's reset our filters here. And what we're going to do is we're going to rank it on appeal. So you can see the highest appeal is actually the fruit bats, but they are a walkthrough exhibit animal. So we're not going to be having those. Then we have got quite a few snakes up here, which are very high in appeal. So we've got a yellow anaconda, an eastern brown snake, and a western diamondback rattlesnake. So I think what we'll do is put 3 types of snake into here, and then we'll have some nice high appeal snakes. So let's just pause it just for a second. So we're going to go through these. So we've got a yellow anaconda. Let's find that in here. So we can search by exhibit. And this is the other way to do it. If you wanted a certain theme, you just click on exhibit animals, aquatic maybe, and you can select from that and do it however you want there. But obviously I've searched on appeal, so we're doing it slightly differently. So let's find our yellow anaconda. Which is not hugely endangered actually, but still has really high appeal. We can have between 1 and 2. So we'll just go back to exhibit trading and get ourselves 2 yellow anacondas. We'll come into our exhibit trading. Let's select both of those, send to zoo, and we'll pick an exhibit to put them in. And you can see again, we're automatically getting a nice little scene in that exhibit depending on what animal we have selected. So I'll go through now and get the other snakes we wanted and place them into the exhibits as well. Okay, so let's just press pause because we're getting lots of warnings here. Animal is not in humidity range. They're not happy at all. So let's go through the basics of setting up an exhibit. So you'll see up here, when you open an exhibit, we've got various different tabs, exactly the same as an animal habitat. I am going to rename this so it's easily identifiable. You can see their welfare is awful. Nutrition and social health is fine. Nutrition's never going to be a problem in an exhibit. You can't add food or water troughs. So yeah, it's just what it is, ultimately. Oh, we can see the snakes in there, actually. Absolutely beautiful. But their exhibit is totally not right. So let's go through the tabs. So on the first one, it's just information about their welfare. And you can request to call a keeper if you need the animals taken care of, you need the habitat cleaned, for example. Then we can see what animals we do have in here. And then we've got this layout tab. Now this is where we need to do research. So what we can do is add extra decoration to our exhibits by doing different levels of research. We need to get through 3 levels in order to unlock all of the different elements. So it's things like heat lamps, extra rocks, extra foliage, that sort of thing. So at the moment, it's not ideal. They're not super happy with it, but it's okay. And you can see on the welfare here, on the exhibit element, you can see the layout rating will contribute towards it, but it's humidity that's really a problem. So keep doing your research and look out for those. And then if we come on to climate, this is where it's really important. So we've got a temperature range and a humidity range. So the temperature range of 25 to 30, you can see that here. So currently it's at 26. I'm actually going to put it right in the middle. So I'm actually just going to up this to 27, which you can see here. So that's the temperature that we're set at. And this one, if we press play here, that will gradually increase up to 27. And the humidity, though, needs to be between 80 and 90. So let's adjust this. And we're going to put this right in the middle. That's usually what I do, up to 85. So if I press play now, you'll see that temperature has gone up to 27. The humidity is gradually increasing. And once it hits that range, they'll be happy. So if we come back over to here, the exhibit's now much better, humidity's fine. They're just not happy with the layout because we need to get that research done. So always make sure you come into your climate tab and adjust these. So we'll need to go down and do exactly the same for our other snakes now, which I have now sorted. So our warnings will go away. We've got a bit of stress in with the prairie togs. I think it's just a lot of people crowding around the habitat there. So we need to keep an eye on that. So then we also have this customized tab here, and this is where it starts to get super duper interesting. Now we're obviously going to build a building around this, but if you didn't want to, you could, do paths up to all 4 sides and guests could look in from all 4 sides. We could close one particular window like that. It looks pretty dull though, I'll be honest. So we're not going to do that. And the other option is to add a 2D or a 3D facade to it. So now this window, actually, this is the open one. I don't want this to be closed, but window 2, we will definitely want to have a facade. So if we go for 2D, you can see it's just like a picture. If we go for 3D, it's like a wall that sort of jumps out, which is super duper cool. I absolutely love this. Window 3, we'll close it, and then I think we might do a 2D one there. We could do 3D and then it would be walls all around, but I think it's kind of almost nicer to have that jungle look. It looks like we're looking through almost a cavern. If we then go to window 4, we'll click close and we'll do a 3D facade there. Yeah, see, that looks like so much better. Really love that. And then there's also water in this habitat as well, so we can customize that. At the moment, we're just using a natural colour. We could change it to whatever colour you wanted to. A little bit weird. Not going to do that. And then you can change the transparency of it as well. We're just going to leave that for now, but good to note that those options are there. And if you go to log, you can see how much the exhibit's costing you in terms of power. If you're managing your finance quite closely, then you may want to look at that. And then here, obviously, we'd need to create a staff work zone to make sure there's a keeper here. We can change the routine visit, so if you ever get problems, you can increase the frequency, or you could actually make it lower if your keepers are overworked and the animals are looking fine. So up to you how you manage that. And now, importantly, on the final tab is management. So this is where it gets really interesting. We now have the option to manage the population. So one thing you will find with these exhibits, and particularly with some of the frog species, is what I found, and the butterflies, they make like wildfire, and you end up with massive overcrowding because they've got a gazillion babies that all grow up, and then there's a big problem. So what you do want to do here is select this manage population button, which basically automatically removes animals over the limit. And you can sort it in terms of a processing priority. So for males, for example, we just want one male and one female in with the yellow anaconda. So we just want one maximum. The options here, processing. You can either store it in the trade centre. So when you come into exhibit trading, in your animal storage here, you're going to find lots and lots of animals because they've all been removed out of the habitat and sent to your trade centre. And then from there, you can decide whether to release them to the wild or sell them or whatever you would like to do. I'm actually going to opt for the release to the wild option here so that they automatically go out of here and are released to the wild for conservation credits. However, you need to bear in mind that there are limits to that, so we'll only sell it up to 250 conservation credits in a year. So sometimes that's not the best option. You can also sell for cash as well if you're pretty cash poor. In some cases, I think the best option is to go for the trade centre, and then you can manage the releasing to the wild, etc. from there. And then we've also got this bit, which is priority. So what I would do is say we want to take the oldest essentially first, so we'll get rid of the oldest. But actually, one thing that is interesting, you could also do appeal and say lowest. So we're going to get rid of the lowest appeal animals and get rid of those. I'm actually going to go for age and say highest, because what we don't want to happen is the animals die. If you go for appeal and you take the lowest ones out, you might be left with all the old animals and then they die and they can't produce babies and you have to go back to exhibit trading and get new animals to come in here. So actually, it's quite a good idea to leave it on age and highest first. And you can create exemptions as well. So if you had more than 2 animals in one, then you could keep your favourite if you wanted to and say that they're exempt from being traded out. So I've just fast forwarded through time so that all of our vet research is complete for these exhibit animals. So you can now see in layouts we have various different options. So with the enrichment, if we just choose like one thing, so you'll see this tropical plant appears there. We'll have another one in the middle. Sometimes it can block some of the guest views, though, I find, so you might want to be a bit selective about it. Oh, look, there's a snake up the bamboo. I absolutely love that. If we just choose one from each category, what you'll see is that layout now kind of increases up to 100%, so you don't have to do all of them. If you do all of them, it does kind of block guests' views, so it's not the most ideal thing to have. So I think, yeah, we will just have this hanging lamp here, the thin log and the tropical plant at the front. Well, the big one at the back is very cool as well, but we'll leave that. And that now means that their exhibit is at 100% and they are happy. So yeah, you don't need to go overboard and have all of them. Of course you can if you want to. Depends what you would like to see. So if we move on to the diamondback rattlesnake and do exactly the same thing. Okay, so now what we want to do is detail up our exhibits, and I'm going to create a building around them so that guests can kind of come in to it, see these exhibit animals poking out through the walls and then come back out, and we'll have education on the walls around them and donation boxes hidden away as well, because this path is not particularly wide for guests in here, so we don't want to kind of block the path too much in the actual building in here. But this will create a nice environment around these exhibits and make it so we've got a little snake house in this middle section here. So with this building, I wanted to maintain the theme that we've used elsewhere in the zoo, using the metal plank wall pieces mixed in with some of those wood panel wall pieces, but also a few extra panels on the inside, because I wanted to make it feel very kind of designed and a little bit more interesting than just using those two wall pieces together. Again, like, I really would reiterate, like, trying out different panels and different wall pieces mixed in together to see what effect you get. And then with the gaps in between the exhibits, obviously they are shorter than a standard wall. So we're just using the panel pieces from the metal planks here, again, mixed in with the wood planks as well, to form the basis of this. And I think the trickiest thing with these is getting them lined up to the surface. So always make sure you're using align to surface and the angle snap tool. Align it to one of your building surfaces and then use angle snap to get it to the angle that you want. And with the new update as well, we also have the ability to move buildings using the X function cross-dimensionally, so you can move it in two directions at once, which I'm actually finding quite confusing. And it took me a while to get used to this and make sure that I wasn't clicking on 2 dimensions. I was just clicking on the 1 dimension I wanted to use, when the case was that I did just want to use that 1 dimension. So it's a little bit fiddly to get used to, but actually I think it's a huge time saver in a lot of cases. And you'll see me having issues with some of these little panels, putting these between the exhibits, and that's because I had random rotation option turned on. Now this is a great option for when you're placing plants or rocks in, because you'll get that random rotation. It will feel much more natural and cohesive rather than looking like you've placed the same plant in over and over in the same direction, which feels very unnatural indeed. But obviously not so useful when it comes to building pieces, so don't forget to, like me, to turn it off. And then here you'll see me mixing in these additional corrugated metal wall pieces, trying to make them sort of sandy colour like the wood panels, so it kind of blends in together, but it's just a different texture. I quite like the way this looked in the end. Now with exhibits as well, education is slightly different. So there is an exhibit education board, which it comes with a little stand, which you will find again in the facilities menu under education. And you have to have these in order to educate your guests about the exhibit. So please make sure you have them. Speakers also work as well, but obviously with 3 exhibits like this in close quarters, I decided not to use them in this case. And then I added in these just 1 meter TV screens. Now, these do not act as education. I think I've said this before, but they will not educate your sim, so you cannot only use these, which is really unfortunate because they look far better in my opinion. But I positioned them in between those little exhibits just up on the wall, and you can select what design you have on them. So in this case, I actually selected to have the exhibit information signs, so exactly the same sign that is on the educational boards, but obviously with no educational effect. And you can create your own signs to go on these screens as well, which we will talk about in a later episode, but it's very, very creative indeed, and I love using these screens. I think it makes it feel much more alive having those information boards on the wall like that. Now I'm using the plastic doorways here that came with the walkthrough exhibits because I feel like they add a really nice touch. And the fact they actually move when citizens walk in is good because the other doors obviously don't, and they just walk through a wall or walk through a door without it opening, which is really disappointing, frankly. So that's why I chose to use these here. And then we came in and just finished it off with a basic ceiling and a basic floor. So you'll see with this ceiling piece that I've placed on the end here, it kind of stuck out beyond the archway that I had at the end there, which I didn't like. So what I did was just deselected it from the group, removed it from the group, used the X control to just pull it back just a tiny, tiny touch so that it wasn't sticking out anymore. And that gave a much neater effect to the end. Exactly the same as you'll see me here doing with the floor pieces to line them up to the edges of the archway there too. Just removing them from the group and then using X to place them where I want. And then we do come on to a few extra decorations. So I've got windows here, which I just placed in again using X, so making sure that they're coming in at the same height. And then copying them through to the other side. So we had windows in the same position on the inside, which I quite like the effect of. Of course, making sure you've got angle snap on to make sure that they're aligned up to the wall perfectly. Then we just finish off the building with a few extra wooden panels and a few extra details. So we've got some vents at the back of the building, and I also chose to add in a little staff entrance as well. Okay, so apart from the fact that it is massively crowded with way too many guests, I'm really liking how this has turned out. And you can see, actually, I did just say these are fully functional. So someone did actually just chuck some money in there. Yes, we've had donations. So I love this little trick. They're pretty ugly, the donation boxes, and I don't usually tend to hide them away, but in something like this where we've got a really narrow crowded space, I definitely don't want them out. But we do want them to bring in the dollar. So yeah, works really nicely hiding them behind these panels. And yeah, I think just experiment with building ideas, mixing in different types. So we've got obviously the metal plank, the corrugated metal and the wooden plank walls all in here mixed together. And I think it works pretty nicely indeed. So yeah, pleased with this. And the outside of the building's pretty rudimentary, but we'll get some nice natural detailing in around this. I might even put some vending machines in here actually and do a little surround around them, a little building around them, just to give some extra food and drink. We've got guests complaining, so we will be doing another food and drinks area, probably in the next episode, I think. But yeah, pleased with how it's all kind of, yeah, turned out there. So we will move on to doing our sloth habitat now. Now, of course, the sloths are a new animal with the new update, the new DLC, the tropical DLC. If you haven't picked this up already, please do consider getting it via my instant gaming link, which is in the description below. You can get it at a really good discounted price, along with all planetzoo games, City Skylines games, and a whole host of other games as well. And it does help to support the channel, so it's greatly appreciated. Okay, so on to the sloth habitat, and with any walkthrough habitat there are slightly different options to be aware of to the main exhibits, but generally things are pretty much the same. So we can see our animals that we've got in here there. And in terms of layout now, obviously I have researched everything. Now with the sloths, I have to say, we want all of these because they all add different things, like the basking light, the hanging chair, I absolutely love the little sloth nest over there. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So we're going to add all of the different layout items to this. With climate, we're actually okay already, so no problems there. We don't need to worry about humidity for sloths, even though I find that a little bit weird because sloths definitely need to live in a humid environment. There's sloths at a zoo near me in real life that I go and visit, and they are contained within a tropical house. That's actually what we're going to be doing today, is making it feel much more like that, so a very humid tropical environment rather than this open air cage. And then in customize, this is where we can customize our walls. So same as the other exhibits, but it's a little bit different. And one key thing to be aware of is this sink wall and ceiling material here. This is very useful. So if we wanted to change the entire thing to solid, for example, we could do that. It's a little bit much. Obviously wire mesh there, or we can just say none, which is what I'm going to do here. We're going to be building in our own walls and floors and all the rest of it. And obviously if we wanted to just change one of them, so let's say we just wanted the ceiling, let's turn that off. We can just change the ceiling to a wire mesh, and then we've still got our ceiling in if we wanted to do that, or one particular wall, obviously, however you want to play that. We're going to turn everything off for this. Then with the doors as well, I am going to remove those down here. So door 1 and door 2. I don't want them there. I'm going to position the doors elsewhere to create a little bit more room around the habitat and kind of open it up and make it feel bigger and more customized. And then also with the floor as well, you'll note you can go none. So if you do mulch, I'm just going to show you an example, and you try and terraform around it. So say you wanted to bring in a little river. You can see it kind of like it sits above it and it's really, really weird. But if you turn it to none, then you can get your water flowing nicely into the actual habitat floor area. So just a little trick to be aware of there. And then as with everything else, we do obviously want to make sure we're managing the population here. So we'll turn this on, and we are going to keep it as 3 males, 3 females, storing in trade centre, taking away the oldest first, and we'll hope that they kind of get better ratings as the babies come in, because we've got pretty decent rating slots here actually to start off with. So we'll see how that all goes. So the overall plan for this building actually came from an idea that I saw on Google Earth when I was looking at pictures of sloth habitats. I saw it was actually a mesh cage, but in very curvy shapes and very curvy lines. So I decided to kind of replicate that, but with a big glass tropical house feel to it. So I started by actually placing in this blue archway that you can see there, but it was purely placed only as a guide, and then using the European marquee beams, which come with the European pack, I then lined up the beam to the edge of this entrance so that I knew where my entrance was going to sit, so I could have some flat walls there. And then just use some glass panel pieces to line up into the bottom of that beam. And what I wanted, you see me, I'm like lining up in the wrong direction there, getting myself confused right at the start here. I'm not really sure why I was lining up so meticulously on a horizontal angle, because what I wanted was the glass going down to the floor. So the idea is generally that I would create one of these wall pieces, which is 2 meters in width, and then we would copy and paste it all the way around the building in a very funky kind of curvy shape to get a very unique look and feel to this building. So there we go, I'm correcting it down to the vertical angle there. And then we'll just simply copy that glass piece all the way down to the ground. And then I actually used an opaque glass piece at the bottom to kind of give ourselves a base to the building. And the next step was to add in the European marquee beams again, all the way up one side of the glass here, so that we could have beams flowing down between the glass, making it feel a little bit more realistic. And I chose this beam because it is relatively thin, so it's not like too obtrusive when we look at the building as a whole once it's finished. And the reason why I just put it down one side will become apparent in a second. You will see that we do just simply copy and paste this one panel piece round in a circle, so we only need one side of the beams because I line that up to the edge of the glass. And you'll see here I decided actually to switch the side that I was doing to make it easier for the direction that I was going to go round the building with these panels. So here you can see how we're going to piece them together. So we've got all elements in our wall piece selected as one group. And then we simply use the X function just to slide it over, rotate it a little bit with angle snap off so that we can freely rotate it to whatever angle we want. Then we again just simply use the X horizontal directions to piece it into place so that the side of the glass is fitting nicely into the beam from the previous piece. And then it is just a case of copy and repeat all the way around, changing up the angles so that we get a really nice curvy, flowy design. And this is essentially the same technique that I used for the barrier going around the mandrels habitat. You just create one kind of wall or element that you want to use, and then you use X to copy and paste it all the way around your building. Or to create a building, it could be a square building, put angle snap on, doesn't matter, but you can create lots of inventive panels this way and put as much detail and decoration into it as you want. And you'll get some really fantastic looking buildings. So the trickiest part of this whole structure was actually getting the ends to meet up nicely, because obviously where I'm using random angles, it was very tricky indeed. But what I actually landed on was actually to change up the ends here and add in some metal panel pieces instead of the glass pieces, just where the entrances came in and out of the walkthrough exhibit. And that way I kind of covered up the fact that the glass was slightly out of kilter because the metal wall pieces were thicker than obviously our glass, so it made a nice a nice little cover-up trick, I think, at the ends here. And you will see that later on. But next I came on to do the roof, and I really wanted a glass roof, but getting it around this structure was nigh on impossible, I'll be honest. So what I opted for was a glass window in the middle of our roof that you can see me putting in there, just with the flat glass roof pieces. And then I used concrete flat roof to surround it. And actually, instead of the main 4x4 roof pieces that you see me playing with here, I actually changed that to the concrete panel pieces, because you can get some that are 2x2 and 2x4, so smaller. And that way we could get it flowing round the circle a lot nicer, because what I wanted was a fairly even overhang around the entire habitat. So again with this, it was just a case of putting one in place and using Control and X to copy it and X functions to align it all the way around. So I started off by doing the edges so I got the overhang nicely, and then came in to fill in the gaps in the middle in between this and the flat glass roof. It was very time consuming indeed, I won't lie, but I think the overall effects look pretty good in the end. So here we are putting in the entrance that I mentioned with the metal clad pieces, mainly using the panel pieces so that we could curve it round the glass a little bit here. You see, it was quite fiddly to get exactly into place, but once it was in, I think this entranceway, I really love it. And I chose the metal clad pieces because I thought it looked super modern alongside all the glass and the concrete. That modern tropical house vibe that I really wanted to go for with this, with the funky shape and yeah, all of the glass. I think it went really well together. So we just pieced these in slowly around the entranceway, and then you will see me deleting the glass on the other side as well. The glass that kind of didn't line up perfectly on one side of the door, managed to get rid of that, and then just rotate slightly the final glass panel into the side of the metal pieces there. So it all kind of flowed together really, really nicely in the end. And of course deleted the glass from inside the doorway and put in our PVC plastic doors. And I wanted this double entrance doorway here with two of the PVC plastic doors there for added security, but also to keep the humidity and the temperature inside the habitat. So I think this worked quite nicely and kind of frames the entranceways on either side. I did exactly the same design on both entrances into and out of the walkthrough habitat here through this metal clad corridor. I'm really pleased with how this came out. And then you will see me after this also going around and adding air vents to the top of the glass windows, which I thought was quite important. And later on in the detailing, I also added air conditioning units inside as well, because I really want to make sure that, you know, it's a climate that's being maintained inside this building, certainly. So now that the building was all pieced together, I wanted to focus on the inside of it, and I actually chose to use the function where you can add railings to ground path. So I chose that option and upgraded the path, and it just gave us, with this cork pathway, really nice railings alongside it to make sure the guests didn't wander off into the sloth habitat either side. And then the main feature of this habitat is this waterfall that I added in one end, using the waterfall from the aquatic pack, which yeah, I really, really like it. And using some extra waterfall effects features which come with the base game to add some splashing at the bottom of it, because I didn't want the full height of the waterfall. I just wanted a very small tropical waterfall in this area. So we use that effect to add that to the water that we put in at the bottom of the waterfall. And of course, because we didn't have the mulch base to the exhibit, we were able to add water in multiple places around it underneath where some of the sloths go, which I really liked and helped to kind of add to this rainforest tropical vibe. So the rest of the detailing is just me adding in lots of plants and rocks and leaves and foliage all over the floor. And we actually also used some mist markers in here to give a really hot, steamy, tropical vibe. Like they're controlling the air temperature and it's super humid. And that really finished it off really nicely, which you will see in the end product. Okay, so let's just take a little look around our very crowded sloth habitat. I absolutely love how this looks from the outside with these rocks. I've just used, again, the rocks that we sink into the ground decals that we used earlier in the series around the food and drinks court area, just to frame the edge of the pathway here. Coloured it all in dirt on the terrain and then added some plants and some mixture of tropical and also temperate plants that we're using throughout the zoo, along with some rocks in the front here, which I really, really love how this sits behind and you can't see past all the foliage. It feels very tropical indeed. But yeah, as we come in, we've obviously got our entrance here, and you won't have seen I did add these sloth decals to the top of it with a few vines, which I thought was quite nice, and our sloth house sign there. We come in through the double PVC door entranceway. We've got little air conditioning units there. Some nice vines above the door covering up some of that harsh metal cladding wall there. Of course, I've had to add donation boxes, which were not easy to hide in this habitat, unfortunately. And we have got our exhibit education stands in, of course, to make sure all of the guests are educated and happy. But yeah, just looking around, you can see it's lots of tropical foliage as the sloth is. Oh, drinking from the little, is it the drink thing or the food holder? Something like that. But yeah, with the steam, it really adds to the environment. Lots and lots of overgrowth absolutely everywhere. Yeah, this is probably my favourite habitat exhibit that I've ever done, to be honest. I absolutely love the vibes of this, and the sloths sitting in this little hanging chair are just amazing. They move so slowly. I wish they had some more interesting movement patterns, I think, but yeah, we've got the sloths in the game, so it's pretty awesome. We've got a little puddle of water down here with all of the mist above it, the sloth climbing across it. Again, lots of foliage and rocks all the way around that. But you can see them climbing across the path. And we come over here and here's the little hidden waterfall detail. Now, I love the fact that you can just hear the waterfall when you're in here. It feels very tropical. I actually added some ambient speakers as well with the rainforest ambient sound, just to give a bit of extra oomph to the area. But yeah, really loving this. And then I did add this extension as well. So I just used some beams within planetzoo, the painted beam, just the base game beam, painted it to try and get it to look almost a similar wood colour to this. Added an extra beam walkthrough across here and this little climbing frame over this side, which I just think helps to kind of extend the exhibit a little bit. I know that they're not going to use it and it's not actually part of the exhibit, but it makes it feel like this is more of one habitat and the whole area is filled with sloth activity. That's what I was really going for. I wanted to kind of customise it a little bit there. Yeah, absolutely love the hidden waterfall. And it was a bit of a pain trying to make sure that none of the plants poked through the glass, but I did just about manage it with this really heavily sunken willow tree in here blocking a lot of it. But yeah, really, really, really pleased with how this has come out. We can just see the other entrance down here with the sloth signs. Yeah, really, really liking that a lot. Then if we just come back over to our snake house, the final details here, I just did a little bit of landscaping around it off camera, just a bit of grass and extra foliage and a little fountain in here too, just to finish off that area, which I thought was quite nice on this peninsula. It feels a little bit more open than the log kind of bush tree planters that we have around the place. Now, one final point to note with our sloths is I have called one of them Mateo after one of my patrons who asked very early on if we were going to put any sloths in and could we name one after him. We have now finally got sloth in the game, Mateo, so there we go. And I've made sure you're the youngest one, so you're not going to die anytime soon, hopefully. But if you have any other suggestions for the names for the rest of our sloths, please do let me know in the comments. And I would love to hear your ideas of what other animals you would like to see in this series, or what other things you would like me to cover from a beginner's perspective as well. Really happy to take viewers' ideas on this and shape the series. I do have a zoo plan, but I'm actually changing it a little bit. So now is the time to get in your suggestions for animals and exhibits that you would like to see, and we will add those in. But for today, that is going to be it. So if you have enjoyed the video, likes, comments and shares are as always really appreciated. And I hope you found the tips for building crazy, interesting habitats like this really useful. But that is all from me for now, so I will catch you again next time. Bye bye.